Hello, my name is Dan Ginnivan, and I got a video for you. We're gonna go in depth and talk about the game that has taken over kids and preteens' lives. Yes, you've guessed it, Fortnite. Do I have your attention? Good, because the real topic in this video is human sexuality. What is sexology? The male and female reproductive systems, and what is sexual response in both male and female? Human sexuality. What is it? In the book Human Sexuality in a World of Diversity, Spencer A. Rathis defines human sexuality as the way in which we experience and express ourselves as sexual beings. There are many factors that help develop our sexuality. Arguably, one of the most important is our actual gender. Whether I am a male or female will likely have a major influence on the development of my individual sexuality. Furthermore, sexuality is an integral part of our personalities, whether we or you are aware of it or not. The study of human sex, or the interaction of the sexes, especially among humans, is known as sexology. This is Alfred Kinsey, a sexologist who the National Center for Biotechnology Institute would describe as one of the most influential Americans of the 20th century. Alfred Charles Kinsey conducted landmark studies of male and female sexual behavior that helped usher in the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 1970s. Kinsey led a team-taught course on marriage and the family instituted in response to a student petition. His course illustrated lectures on biology of sexual stimulation, the mechanics of intercourse, and the techniques of contraception, as were his spirited denunciations of repressive laws and social attitudes. He published the books Sexual Behavior in the Human Male and Sexual Behavior in the Human Female. Feel free to check out the movie Kinsey, starring that guy with a particular set of skills acquired over a long career. Liam Neeson, for those of you who haven't seen Taken. Next, we're going to go into the female reproductive system. And I know you guys are all probably looking at each other like this. Bear with me. Pictured here is the external portion of the female reproductive system. You can see the labia majora, or outer lips, which are two folds of spongy flesh that enclose the labia minora, clitoris, and vaginal opening. The labia minora, or inner lips, are smaller folds within the labia majora that house the urethral and vaginal openings. The labia minora meets above the clitoris to form the clitoral hood. The clitoris, aka the center of sexual arousal in females, contains a high concentration of sensory nerve endings and is sensitive to stimulation. Now that you've seen the external parts of the female reproductive system, I'll let my friends at Crash Course help describe the interior parts of the female reproductive system.
On that is the vagina, which I'm sure you know is how menstrual blood and babies leave the body and how sperm are parts of the system. The ground control of the female reproductive anatomy, the place where the orders are given, are of course the ovaries. Their main job is to produce and release female gametes and sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. You'll remember what happened. Each ovary lives inside a fibrous sac that consists of a layer of connective tissue called the tunica albuginea and another layer of cuboidal epithelial cells called the germinal epithelium, which is actually part of the peritoneum that lines the abdominal cavity. The ovary itself contains a cortex that houses developing eggs and a medulla that contains most of the ovary's blood vessels and nerves. It might meet a nice young sperm. The tubes are about 10 centimeters long, and interestingly, they aren't actually connected to the ovaries. This means that when the egg pushes through the ovary, it has to float a short way through the peritoneal cavity before it's caught up by a fallopian tube. Now, only if and when an egg fuses with a sperm does it actually complete meiosis II and officially become an ovum. But whether it's fertilized or not, the egg works its way down the tube until it enters the uterus, a hollow, thick-walled, and very stretchable muscular organ that sits anterior to the rectum and posterior-superior to the bladder and ends with the cervix. And the uterine wall is composed of three layers: the perimetrium on the outside, the bulky, smooth muscle myometrium that contracts during labor, and the inner mucosal lining, the endometrium, which consists of a thin, deep basal layer and an outer functional.
Alright ladies, you're done. Guys, it's your turn. Go ahead, take a look at your buddy. He's looking at you like this, isn't he? Once again, I'm going to reach out to my friends at Crash Course to give you an overview of the male reproductive system.
The testes, the gonads of the anatomical male, are tasked with making male gametes, sperm, and the androgen hormone testosterone. But unlike the ovaries, which are protected inside the body, testicles dangle outside the abdominal cavity in the flex. Each one is divided into about 200 destination, the rete testis in the posterior testis. From there, the sperm, although still immobile, leave the testes by way of the epididymis, a long tangled set of tubes behind the testes where they'll spend the next few weeks gaining their mobility. The bulk of the epididymis consists of the enormous duct of the epididymis, which, believe it or not, could be uncoiled to stretch about 6 meters. Though I don't suggest doing that. This duct is full of tiny microvilli called stereocilia, which provide a huge surface area to help reabsorb some extra fluid and help pass along nutrients to feed the idling sperm. It takes sperm nearly 20 days to work their way through this labyrinth, during which time they continue to mature. Once through the duct, they enter the inferior epididymis, where they gain mitochondria, so they'll have energy to swim hard at a moment's notice. At this point, they have all the hardware to swim, but still lack the ability to actually move on their own, a skill kept under wraps until they leave the epididymis and get activated by a series of glandular secretions. When that time comes, during ejaculation, the sperm flow from the epididymis through the vas deferens, a tube that travels up behind the bladder and joins with the duct from the seminal gland to create the ejaculatory duct. The left and right ejaculatory ducts pass into the prostate gland, where they empty into the urethra, which runs from the bladder through the penis and into the outside world. Seminal vesicles are a pair of small, hollow glands behind the bladder that secrete a yellowish, slightly alkaline fluid that contains coagulating enzymes, fructose, and other things to help nourish and transport sperm. Interestingly, the vesicles also secrete special prostaglandins that help increase sperm success outside the body by decreasing the viscosity of a female's cervical mucus and actually triggering a reverse peristalsis of the uterus that helps draw sperm up the female reproductive tract. Now, the prostate gland encircles the urethra just inferior to the bladder. During ejaculation, it contracts to squeeze its own special secretion into the urethra. This stuff contains mainly citric acid and an enzyme cocktail that helps keep semen liquefied and thus easier to move and swim through. And finally, we have the pea-sized bulbourethral glands below the prostate that secrete a clear mucus that drains into the urethra to clear out any acidic urine prior to ejaculation. Speaking of, by now you may be wondering if we're ever going to get to what's probably the first thing you think of when it comes to the male anatomy. The penis hangs from the perineum, between the pubic bone and coccyx. It consists of a shaft that ends at an enlarged tip called the glans penis, surrounded by a fleshy cuff of foreskin. Internally, the penis contains 3 layers of erectile tissues, each wrapped in a layer of dense, fibrous connective tissue. This spongy network is made of connective tissue and smooth muscle that's full of tiny vascular spaces that fill with blood during sexual arousal and make the penis expand and become rigid. The resulting erection is what helps the penis penetrate the vagina.
Now that you have a crash course understanding of the reproductive organs and what they do, let's talk about sexology and sexologists once again. Pictured here are sexologists William Masters and Virginia Johnson, who, like Dr. Kinsey, were key in the understanding of human sexuality. According to the Kinsey Institute, in the late 1950s, Masters and Johnson pioneered research into the understanding of human sexual response, dysfunction, and disorder through direct observation and anatomical and physiological sexual responses of their subjects. Masters and Johnson are most recognized for their 4-stage model of sexual response, known as the human sexual response cycle, which include the following phases: excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. During the excitement phase, physical changes start. In men, increased amounts of blood flows into the genitals and produce an erection. The testicles draw up towards the body. In women, vaginal lubrication begins. The upper vagina expands, the uterus is pulled upward, and the clitoris becomes engorged. Next is the plateau phase. During this phase, sexual tensions level off. In men, the testicles swell and continue to elevate towards the body. The head of the penis swells and may deepen in color. In women, the other third of the vagina swells. Lubrication may slow down and the clitoris is pulled back. Coloring and swelling of the labia increases. The third phase is the orgasm phase. During this time, increased tension peaks and discharges affect the whole body. Rhythmic muscular contractions affect the uterus and outer vagina in women. In men, there are contractions of the glands and tubes that produce and carry semen, the prostate gland, and urethral bulb, resulting in the expulsion of semen. also known as ejaculation. The fourth and final phase is the resolution phase. During this time, the body returns to its unaroused state. In some women, this does not occur until after repeated orgasms. There you have it. In this video we covered human sexuality, sexology, the male and female sexual anatomy, and Masters and Johnson's stages of sexual response. I would like to thank the following in helping me prepare this video: the Kinsey Institute, the book Human Sexuality, Diversity in Contemporary America, the YouTube channel Crash Course, Masters and Johnson, 4 Phases of Physiological Response by Rodney Bell. Thanks for watching.